next one failed in March. Minutes before Republicans in the House were supposed to vote on their first Kill Obamacare bill, they had to yank it off the floor. They realized at the last minute they didn't have enough votes to pass it, so they pulled it. That one in March, that was the first one. Then they tried again in May. This time the House did pass it, but just barely, squeaked through by 4 votes, which is a real squeaker given that the Republicans have an almost 50-seat majority in the House. But after that squeaker is when they had that goofy celebration at the White House right after, remember? With that incredible, rich diversity of white men in suits celebrating that they got their health care bill 1/3 of the way through the legislative process. But despite the rainbow fiesta at the White House that day, that bill also never made it to the president's desk. That's because the Republican-controlled Senate took one look at it and chucked it in the garbage. So then it was time to try again. Next go-round was in June. The Republican-controlled Senate wrote their own bill to kill Obamacare, and then that one promptly went bust as well. That one didn't even have enough support to entertain the idea of even trying to bring it to the floor. So then they scrapped it and they came up with another one in July. This time, what they called a straight repeal of the Affordable Care Act. And they got that one all the way to the floor of the Senate. But then, dramatic late-night death. John McCain made his dramatic entrance, took his theatrical pregnant pause, and then gave his big thumbs down. Okay. It was very exciting. For 7 years, Republicans have been saying they need to be in control of Washington so they can kill Obamacare. It's the one thing they have all insisted they would instantly do as soon as they got the reins of power. But they have failed over and over and over again at trying to do it. Since the inauguration, Republicans have held the White House and the Senate and a large majority in the House, but they have passed 0 significant legislation of any kind. Really, they have not passed a single major bill. Not one. And I think that's in part because they assumed they'd just pass this healthcare thing first. They assumed that killing Obamacare would be the low-hanging fruit, and then everything else they'd figure it out thereafter. But this low-hanging fruit, turns out it isn't getting picked, and it keeps bonking them on the head instead. And that's because, well, this was Front Range, Colorado today. Hundreds of people pouring into the streets of Denver against the Republican health care bill. You can hear them chanting, "Healthcare is a human right. Fight, fight, fight." Members of the local ADAPT chapter were there too. They're the disability rights activists who've been so stalwart, so loud about this. In Deep Red, Texas, these guys stood on a busy highway overpass today with this sign. If you squint, you can read it. "Repeal and replace Senator Ted Cruz." Given his support for repealing and replacing Obamacare, we're told that sign was met by a healthy dose of supportive honking from passing cars. In Roanoke, Virginia, Congressman Bob Goodlatte turned 65 today, eligible for Medicare. His constituents threw him a party to mark the occasion and to ask him not to cut Americans off their health insurance. They brought a clown. They paraded cupcakes and balloons into his office for a happy birthday celebration. They ended up donating the rest to a local hospital in Congressman Goodlatte's name. In Kansas City, Missouri, Senator Jerry Moran's constituents talked about how they could lose their health insurance under the new Republican bill, while this staffer, bored-looking staffer, took notes on what they said. Honestly, the best and sharpest reason why Republicans haven't been able to do the one thing they said for sure they'd do, the best and sharpest reason why Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, hasn't been killed yet, is that people like this mom decided they would change their own lives around to try relentlessly to save it.
I've been here before to talk about his health care and his needs, and I'm not sure why in this country we're asking mothers to justify why it is important to keep their children alive. Why do I have to keep coming here to ask Senator Moran to protect my son's health and life? It's, having a child with a disability is stressful enough. It's hard enough. But we push on and we live our lives like anybody else. He goes to school. We're out and about. We're everywhere in our community. We're proud of him, and I have no regrets about his life and who he is. But what makes that possible is healthcare. What makes that possible is Medicaid. And the cuts in this bill will devastate us and families around this country.
That kind of personal, local being there, showing up, is a big part of why Republicans have failed over and over and over again to erase Obamacare, because that's what their staffers have been listening to. That's what they've been listening to at every event they do. That's what their constituents are telling them every time they show their face anywhere near their constituents. And the Beltway doesn't report on it that way, but you can see it around the country over and over and over again. What is different about this new Republican effort to kill Obamacare, though, is that this one comes with a deadline. Under Senate rules, the Republicans basically have to pass this thing by next Saturday if they're going to. The prospect of that is now hanging by a thread with the news today that John McCain says he'll vote no. Republicans can only afford to lose 2 no votes. Right now, counting John McCain, they've got 2 definite no votes from Rand Paul and John McCain. Susan Collins says she's leaning no. Lisa Murkowski, well, she voted no the last time, and this bill is way worse for her state. If Republicans lose Collins or Murkowski or anyone else, if they lose just 1 more vote, this bill is toast. We know what this looks like. We have seen them lose on this before, and we know why. But they've got a few more days to try to pull this off. Watch this space.